The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I adjusted my tie for the 100th time that morning. 23 years I'd been working security at the Metropolitan Convention Center in Chicago, and today felt different. President Martinez was scheduled to speak at the Global Economic Summit, and the place buzzed with an energy I'd never felt before. My name is Marcus Chen, and at 57, I'd become as much a fixture as the marble pillars holding up the grand entrance. Most people looked right through me, just another aging security guard in an ill-fitting uniform, clipboard in hand, checking IDs and directing lost visitors to the restrooms. To them, I was invisible, insignificant. They had no idea I spoke 7 languages fluently, held 2 master's degrees in international relations and criminal justice, or that I'd spent 15 years with the Secret Service before a knee injury forced my retirement. The pension wasn't enough, so I took this job to make ends meet. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept me close to the work I'd once loved. "Chun," barked Supervisor Davidson, a man half my age who'd been promoted over me 3 times, despite having the investigative skills of a houseplant. "Make sure you stay in your assigned sector today. The real security is handled by the pros, understand?" I nodded politely, swallowing the irony. The pros he was referring to were the current Secret Service detail, several of whom I'd actually trained back in my day, but Davidson didn't know that. None of them did. I preferred it that way, less complicated. Fewer questions about why a former federal agent was checking credentials at a convention center. Got the morning passed in its usual blur of badge scanning and crowd management. VIPs streamed through the main entrance, their entourages creating small tornadoes of importance around them. I recognized several faces from my old life: diplomats, CEOs, politicians I'd once protected. None of them recognized me. The gray hair, the extra 40 pounds, the uniform, I might as well have been a different person. Around noon, while stationed near the service entrance, I noticed him. A maintenance worker wheeling in a cart of cleaning supplies, nothing unusual about that. Except his shoes were wrong expensive Italian leather, not the work boots the other janitors wore. His hands were too soft, manicured, and when he thought no one was looking, his posture changed completely. The slouched shoulders straightened, the shuffling gait became precise. Military. Old habits die hard. I'd spent years reading people, cataloging details that others missed. This man didn't belong, but he'd fooled everyone else. I watched him disappear into the service corridors and felt that familiar tingle of instinct, the same one that had saved my life and others, more times than I could count. I tried to radio it in, but Davidson cut me off. "Chun, I told you to. Stay in your sector. Stop bothering the real security with your paranoid theories. These people have been vetted 6 ways to Sunday." The dismissal stung, but it wasn't unexpected. I'd learned to keep my observations to myself after too many eye rolls and condescending smiles. But this felt different. The president would be speaking in 2 hours, and something was very wrong. I made a decision that would either end my career or save lives. Abandoning my post, I followed the maintenance workers' route through the service areas. The convention center was a maze of corridors and storage rooms, but I knew every inch of it. 23 years of walking these halls had given me an advantage no blueprint could provide. I found him in a supply closet on the 3rd floor, directly above the main auditorium where the president would be speaking. He'd assembled what looked like a high-powered rifle, the kind that could punch through bulletproof glass from a distance. My blood ran cold as I recognized the components. This wasn't some amateur's homemade weapon, but professional-grade hardware that required serious connections to acquire. The man was focused on his preparation, muttering to himself in what I recognized as Farsi. My language training kicked in, and I caught fragments. Finally pay. Years of waiting. A single quote. They'll remember this day. Finally pay. Years of waiting. I had two choices: confront him directly and risk him escaping, or triggering an immediate attack, or try to get help from the official security team who'd already dismissed me once. Neither option felt good, but innocent lives hung in the balance. I chose a third option, one that drew on skills I hadn't used in years. Moving with a silence that surprised even me, I approached from his blind spot. The man was so focused on his weapon assembly that he didn't notice my presence until I was close enough to act. 23 years of checking IDs hadn't dulled my reflexes as much as I'd thought. The takedown was swift and quiet. A pressure point strike to temporarily disable his right arm, a chokehold to render him unconscious without permanent damage, and cable ties from my utility belt to secure him. The entire encounter lasted less than 30 seconds, but as I knelt beside the unconscious assassin, I heard footsteps in the corridor, multiple sets, moving with purpose. My heart sank as I realized this wasn't a lone wolf operation. This man had backup. I grabbed his radio and listened to the chatter. 3 more operatives, positioned at different points around the building. They were coordinating a multi-vector attack designed to overwhelm the president's protective detail. Even if the Secret Service was at the top of their game, they weren't prepared for this level of coordinated assault. The smart thing would have been to run, to get as far away as possible and let trained professionals handle it. But I'd taken an oath once, long ago, to protect and serve. That oath didn't come with an expiration date. Using the assassin's radio, I mimicked his voice and began feeding false information to his team. Years of language training and vocal mimicry practice paid off as I convinced them to alter their positions, sending 2 of them to empty areas of the building while keeping the third focused on an entrance the president wasn't using. Meanwhile, I worked my way toward the main security command center. I needed to warn someone who would listen, someone who would act on my information. The problem was, I'd burned bridges with Davidson, and the Secret Service detail wouldn't know me from any other random security guard. Then I remembered Agent Sarah Collins. She'd been a rookie when I was winding down my career, assigned to my detail for training. Brilliant, thorough, and one of the few who'd actually listened to my advice back then. If she was still in the service and assigned to this detail, she might remember me. I found her near the main entrance, coordinating with local law enforcement. She looked older, more confident, wearing the subtle earpiece and scanning eyes that marked her as senior protection detail. "Agent Collins," I called out, approaching slowly with my hands visible. She turned, her hand instinctively moving toward her weapon until she saw my uniform. Her eyes narrowed with the professional wariness of someone who'd learned to trust no one completely. "Do I know you?" she asked, her tone polite but guarded. "Marcus Chen, you were assigned to my detail in Miami, 2009. I taught you the 3-layer assessment protocol." Her expression changed instantly, recognition flooding her features. "Marcus, my God, what are you doing here?" "Working security, but that's not important. We have a problem. 4-man assassination team, professional grade, positioned throughout the building. I neutralized one, but there are 3 more, and they're coordinating a synchronized attack." Any other agent might have questioned my information, asked for proof, wasted precious time on verification. But Sarah knew my reputation, remembered my instincts. She was already speaking into her radio, activating emergency protocols. "Show me," she said simply. I led her to the supply closet where the first assassin lay unconscious, the rifle partially assembled beside him. Sarah photographed everything with practiced efficiency while calling for a bomb squad and additional tactical support. "Positions of the others?" she asked, all business now. Using the building schematics I'd memorized over 23 years, I detailed the locations where I'd redirected the other operatives. Sarah coordinated with her team, deploying agents to intercept them while initiating A subtle evacuation of VIPs from vulnerable areas. The next hour unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. The president's speech was delayed due to technical difficulties, while tactical teams moved through the building. 2 more assassins were captured without incident, caught off guard in the positions where I'd redirected them. The 4th managed to escape, but not before being identified through security cameras. Enough information for a nationwide manhunt. As the immediate crisis passed and the building was declared secure, I found myself in the unusual position of being the center of attention. The FBI wanted statements, the Secret Service requested briefings, and Davidson looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant as he realized his paranoid security guard had prevented a presidential assassination. Agent Collins found me as I was finishing my 3rd interview of the day. "You know they're going to want to offer you a job," she said. Settling into the chair beside me in the temporary command center, I shook my head. I'm 57 years old with a bad knee and 23 years of checking IDs under my belt. I'm not Secret Service material anymore. You just prevented the assassination of a sitting president using skills most agents never develop and institutional knowledge that saved lives. I'd say you're exactly the kind of material we need. The offer was tempting, I won't lie. The chance to return to meaningful work, to use my training for something more significant than enforcing parking regulations. But I'd made peace with my life, found a different kind of purpose in the quiet work of keeping people safe in small ways. "I appreciate it," I told her, "but I like what I do. Someone needs to watch the doors, check the IDs, notice the details everyone else misses. Maybe I can do that better from where I am." Sarah nodded, understanding in her eyes. "The offer stands, Marcus, always." Later that evening, as the convention center returned to normal and the last of the federal agents packed up their equipment, I walked my usual rounds. The building felt the same, but something had shifted. Davidson actually made eye contact when he passed me, offering a grudging nod of respect. The other guards looked at me differently, 2 no longer invisible, no longer insignificant. The courage looked at me differently, 2 no longer invisible, no longer invisible, no longer insignificant. President's speech was rescheduled for the following day. I worked that event too, standing in my usual position by the service entrance. This time though, when President Martinez finished his remarks and worked the crowd, he made a point of stopping by my station. "Officer Chen," he said, extending his hand. "I understand I owe you my life." "Just doing my job, sir," I replied, meaning it. He studied my face for a moment, then smiled. "Some jobs are more important than they appear, aren't they?" As his detail moved him along, I returned to my post, clipboard in hand, watching the crowd with the same careful attention I'd always maintained. I was still just a security guard in an ill-fitting uniform, still checking IDs and directing people to the restrooms, but I was also the man who saved the president's life, who turned 23 years of observation and experience into the split-second decisions that prevented a national tragedy. I was both invisible and essential, overlooked and indispensable. Sometimes the most important people are the ones no one notices until the moment when their vigilance, their dedication, their quiet competence becomes the thin line between order and chaos. I'd spent my career in the shadows, and I was content to remain there, watching, waiting, protecting in ways both large and small. The next person who walked through those doors might be a diplomat or a janitor, a CEO or an assassin. They wouldn't know my story, wouldn't recognize my face or understand my background. And that was exactly how I liked it. After all, the best security is the kind nobody sees coming.